We have several guests here with us today. You guys have already met Renee Medina, who is the Veteran Service Officer with the Manatee County Veteran Services. We also have with us Andrew Liverman of the Office of Regional Counsel, Judge Moreland, Alyssa Lambeth, Renee Brady, Judge Inman, Judge Gould, Ross Hodges, who is our South State Bank sponsor, Judge Nicholas, Judge Smith, Judge Steele, Judge Doyle, sorry, Judge Doyle, Judge Aaron, Judge Sniffen, and Mr. Ray Bellamy. I want to especially thank all of the judges for attending today. We're always very grateful to have you. Please make sure that you're opening up and reading your weekly e-blast and emails from the association. This is how we communicate with you guys, so please make sure you do that. We have a save the date for the association's holiday party for Friday, December 2nd. It's going to be at the Heritage Harbor Golf Club again. It's free to members and guests. We also have an upcoming CLE on November 3rd. The Family Law section is having Judge Terry Dees giving the CLE. And then on November 9th, there will be a CLE for the Reptiles group. Check our weekly news and you can see it, the details. At this time, I would like for Mr. Ray Bellamy to come to the podium, please, and he's going to talk to us for a couple of minutes about his Thanksgiving dinner project.
Good afternoon. Just want to say thank you so much for having an opportunity to be here. I really appreciate that. Each year, we try to reach out to families that are less fortunate than we are, and we do that by way of trying to give out Thanksgiving baskets to needy families. In that basket includes a turkey, cranberry sauce, string beans, stovetop stuffed and rice, and a giant loaf of bread. And for years, I did it in every community that I lived in. I grew up here. That gives you an idea how old Manatee County is. And, and so I partnered with Sheriff Wells because I grew up here. And I've been doing it everywhere else, and I hadn't done it in Manatee County. So about 10 years ago now, 12 years ago, 10 to 12 years ago now, we started doing it here. I made the initiative that it was important because this place was wonderful to me, did so much for me. And many of you sitting in here right now, your families helped me. You don't even realize it, but they did. But I do, and I thank you for that. I'd like to have you come out and be involved in what we do. We will be doing it on November 22nd at Lincoln Middle School, and of course that's where I went to high school at. And we would like to have as many people as possible. I wanted, when I started, to be a community project, and that's what it's turned out to be. And I thank the community for that. I mean, everybody's pitching in and helping. And I'd like for you to come out. We give away the baskets to needed families. We do not give away turkeys. On the radio and different places they say that. But we know where the food is going when we come there, because we identify families of need with the help of the Manatee County Family Plan of the state of Florida, and also our churches and community organizations. As a matter of fact, I'm very lucky today. I'm sitting at the table with the Boys and Girls Club person, and I'm going to talk with them about making sure that I get a list. They give us a list of the names, and then we do our thing. So you are invited, and I thank you for letting me talk. Please come out. Please support the initiative. All we want you to do is come out and put a turkey in a box, put a can of cranberry sauce in a box, and we all do it, and you're unbelievable when we work together as a team how fast it goes. So I thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you. If you have any questions for those of you who'd like to get in touch with me, I can be reached at 850-296-4511, Again, 850-296-4511, and I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.
And now, Aaron Creathen, our president-elect, is going to introduce our speaker, which is Commander Bradley Smith.
Good afternoon. I've got the honor today of introducing Commander Bradley Smith. Commander Smith started flying lessons at the age of 15 and obtained his private pilot's license prior to enlisting in the Navy in 1961. He was later selected for the Naval Aviation Cadet Flight Training and received his Naval Aviation Wings and Officer's Commission in 1964. After further weapons and aircraft carrier training, he was assigned to Jet Attack Squadron VA-76 and immediately went to sea on aircraft carriers Roosevelt, America, and Enterprise. In October of 1965, he departed for Southeast Asia on the USS Enterprise, arriving off South Vietnam in late November of 1965. On the 25th of March, 1966, while on his 80th mission, Commander Smith was shot down over North Vietnam near the city of Vinh. He was held a prisoner of war from March of 1966 until his release in February of 1973. After his repatriation and a flight refreshing training, Commander Smith was one of the small number of Navy pilots to go back into the fire, returning to fleet combat squadrons. From 1974 through 1981, he served 3 A-7 squadron tours on aircraft carriers. From 74 to 77, he served on the USS Saratoga, seeing duty off the coast of Lebanon. And from 1979 through 81 on the USS Coral Sea in the Indian Ocean during the Iran hostage crisis. From 1981 to 1985, Commander Smith served as the aircraft maintenance officer and as a weapons system test pilot at the Pacific Missile Test Center in Point Mugu, California. And he retired from the Navy in 1985.
Power on.
I'm still powered on. Commander Smith's personal decorations include 2 Silver Stars, the Legion of Merit, 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses, the Meritorious Service Medal, 3 Bronze Stars, 2 Purple Hearts, 5 Air Medals, and the Navy Commendation Medal. Commander Smith moved to Bradenton with his wife Kirsten in 1991, where they continue to reside and spend time with their daughter and grandchildren. Please, a warm welcome for Commander Smith.
Please have a seat. Continue your lunch. And thank you for inviting me. As Aaron introduced me, I was a young Navy combat pilot flying jet aircraft, attack fighter aircraft off the deck of the USS Enterprise in 1965 and early 1966. I flew a number of missions. Primarily, we did 2 different things. We flew in the south of Vietnam. We would be stationed off the coast of South Vietnam, and our main job was close air support for the troops on the ground, Marines, Army guys. I spoke with a gentleman whose father was over there as a long-range reconnaissance. Whenever they ran into real trouble over there, they would call in for an airstrike. That was us. So we would provide whatever was necessary in the way of weapons to try to protect our Marines and our Army guys on the ground. It was satisfying in many, many ways. We will never know, but I think we probably saved hundreds, if not thousands, of lives doing that particular type of a mission. The other missions we flew were over the north, the hard targets around Hanoi, Haiphong, etc. It's little known now, but at the height of the Vietnam War, the city of Hanoi had more defensive rings around it than the city of Moscow. It was a very, very dangerous place to go. I unfortunately was on a number of flights where several of my squadron mates were killed. I saw them go down, saw them die. We were losing about 1 out of every 6 guys at that point in the war. What I really wanted to talk to you about today, though, is at the end of the war in North Vietnam, or at least the end of our captivity in North Vietnam, there were 560 prisoners of war. Combination of Air Force, Navy, a small number of Marines, a few CIA guys, Air America, and there were about 100 guys captive in the South. I wanted to talk about their spirit, their strength, their endurance, and patriotism. I want to talk about how do you survive in a situation like that. I want to talk about how do you help other people survive, not only yourself, but how do you try to help other people survive. Compassion, communications, just keeping in touch with people. And how do we stay together as a military organization? How do we resist the Vietnamese trying to break us up and to have people turn to help them out? We maintained military discipline throughout that period of time in the unity. We developed a motto, and our motto was return with honor. Everything we did was based on the fact that we wanted to return in an honorable fashion. I can summarize the 7 years I was there, and I'll tell you more about it, in basically 3 words. It was brutal. Brutal beyond what you can imagine, what you can believe. During my career, before and after Vietnam, I was fortunate enough, lucky enough, to be in some of the top-notch squadrons in the Navy, full of great people, great career people, just great people, period. But considering the fact that the guys that I was with in Vietnam, I consider them, the 560 guys who were there not by choice, to be the top-notch people I have ever known. They had the courage, compassion for others. We were all military. We had no weapons, but we were military, and we behaved as such. They were tough and grit, had a lot of grit. To look at them, it looks like a ragtag outfit. Everybody's wearing raggy, mismatched clothing, beards, hair, unkempt, maybe haven't had a shower or had a bath. I won't ever say you got a shower. Hadn't washed for a couple of weeks at a time. But they were tougher than nails and the best military organization I have ever had the honor to serve with. I'm going to talk a little bit about myself just to give you my perspective from my viewpoint. Now, the shoot down, as was mentioned, I was shot down on my 80th mission. I was flying a single-seat, single-engine airplane. We were attacking a bridge, and I was hit at 8,000 feet just as I was rolling in on the target. Very quickly, the tail of the aircraft was blown off. I had no loss of control. The airplane was in a dive and was gaining speed rapidly. I had my hand up on the bomb jettison handle to get rid of the weight, see if I could turn the airplane. We were only 5 miles off of the coast on this target. Well, that wasn't happening. By the time, at this point in time, the airplane was on fire, was spinning, and was heading almost directly toward the ground. I took my hand off the bomb release and reached for the ejection seat handle. We have 2 in the airplane, one between your knees and one behind your head, or up here. I couldn't reach that one. I reached for the handle. I remember thinking to myself and saying to myself, it's too late to get out. I was so low. I saw out of the corner of my eye 600 miles an hour on my airspeed indicator. The next thing I know, I woke up 10 feet underwater in the middle of a river. I don't remember ejecting. At that airspeed, it tore off my helmet, my mask, everything, knocked me cold. I do remember a tug, and the next thing is I woke up 10 feet underwater. For us Navy guys, we practice being blown off the side of an aircraft carrier or being in the water all the time, because the biggest thing is to get rid of that parachute. So automatically, we go through that drill every day when you get in the airplane. You go through the drill of pulling your Mae West, getting rid of your parachute. Why is that so critical? The parachute fills up with water and drags you down and drowns you. So I automatically did that, popped up in the middle of the river. They had put a boat out from the north side and one from the south side, at which the river was about a mile wide. 7 o'clock in the morning, you could smell the fields in Vietnam or have a lot of aroma, let me put it that way. Smoke, charcoal fires, etc. In a matter of about 30 seconds, I have gone from a nice cozy cockpit in an airplane with air conditioning to being in the middle of a river. They came out, stopped from about here to that wall away from me. By that time, I'd already gotten rid of my pistol, all the ammunition I had, etc., my radio, survival radio. I had tried to make a call to my flight. I was in a flight of 4 airplanes, and either the radio was broken or no one heard me. Anyway, I got rid of it. They stopped it and looked at me, and I looked at them, and it was kind of a surreal moment. I probably was in shock. I had raised my hands. The guy in the closest boat had his foot up on the gunnel on the side of the boat. His face was all scarred, and I'm thinking to myself, this guy doesn't like me very much. 6 guys in black pajamas, all with AK-47s. They finally rowed over, grabbed me by the scruff of the neck, and pulled me ashore. I spent a week traveling from there to Hanoi. I'm going to try to jump through some of these things very quickly because I don't want to overspend my time. And Grace Ann will probably get the hook wherever she's at. I spent a week traveling. It was not a fun week, I can assure you. During the ejection, I had managed to damage my neck, and the fact that it didn't hurt, but wherever it was, I couldn't move it. I had to do this. Very shortly after, they wired my arms behind my back, so I couldn't even do that. I suffered some other injuries and banged up my knee. It was about the size of a cantaloupe. I remember arriving in Hanoi at the Wallow prison, which is the main prison downtown. We called it the Hanoi Hilton. I can remember it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm laying in the back of a truck. It's raining, and I see this door, excuse me, in this old wall, wrought iron hinges, and across the top it says Maison Centrale, which is a central house in French. I want to go back a few days in that process. 4 days after I was shot down, thank you. Use that. 4 days after I was shot down, I was in this village, and during the day, they would throw me in this dugout underneath a bunch of palm trees, palm logs that were laying there, and I had had nothing to eat, a little bit of water during this period of time. And anyway, the guard that was guarding me drugged me out of there, and this elderly man showed up, white hair, and he spoke French. Well, I spoke a little bit of French, but I didn't want him to know that. Anyway, he was asking me questions in English about where I came from, what squadron, and all the rest of the military type information. I kept shaking my head and saying, no, 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 I can't tell you that. As this was going on, this guard was getting more and more agitated, angry, because I wouldn't answer any of the questions. And so he ran off, came back with a club about 3 or 4 feet long with a couple inches, and he was going to beat it out of me. The old man said, no, don't do that. But then he wandered off. So I'm standing at the top of this dugout, and it's about 4 feet down, 4 feet, 5 feet deep. And my arms are tied behind my back, wire behind my back. This guard comes up behind me and pushes me, so I land face first down in this hole in this dirt. and I heard that bolt slip back on that AK-47. And I thought, this is it. He screamed and yelled and swore, but he didn't shoot me, obviously, and he left. I figured the reason I'm telling you that, this was the first time I set a goal. I had been there 4 days. I figured, well, the Second World War lasted 4 years. I survived 4 days. I can survive another 4 days. And that became 4 weeks, 4 months, you name it. But I always set a goal throughout my time I was there for 7 years. And I would go, if that date came and nothing happened, I'd set another one. Just keep going that way. I arrived in Hanoi, as I mentioned, and immediately went to what we called the torture room. I spent a week there being beaten, questioned, etc. I obviously was not cooperating. So through torture and ropes, they managed to dislocate both of my shoulders before I left there. They threw me in a place called the Heartbreak Hotel, or we called the Heartbreak part of it. And I was there all by myself. I hadn't hardly eaten anything in a week, a little bit of water. I was weak. I didn't know if I was the only guy alive. I had not seen anybody, heard anybody, didn't know anything about it. And so I'm in this cell. It's like an old French dungeon. In fact, this prison was built by the French back in the middle 1800s, late 1800s. Old concrete walls full of holes, dark. They had a concrete bed on one side with leg irons on one end and manacles on the other end. The old rotten doors, steel doors, all rusty, etc. I've been there for a day or so, and then all of a sudden I heard "Hey, you American?" Some guy down the hallway. Obviously the first voice I'd heard since I was there. At least there's two of us. He said, he didn't give me his name, he didn't ask my name. He just said, "Look at the wall, memorize it." Carved into concrete in the wall was a line of letters, 5 letters across, 5 columns, 5 lines. This became, as I figured it out, he told me memorize it. It is a code, a tap code. This was the tap code. So if you wanted to send a message through 2 foot thick concrete wall, you used it. Hi, H-I. So you know, second row, third letter, et cetera, the whole code, you could tap through anything. We used that throughout the time I was there. We developed many more sophisticated systems. But keeping in contact, the communications was a huge part of it, just to keep in touch with everybody else, to know what the Vietnamese were doing, what we were doing, and also just to keep in touch with people to keep their spirits up. I went from there to a camp that was called the zoo. We called it the zoo. We named every camp, every cell, everything, so we could tell people where we're at. After about 6 weeks of being there in solitary confinement, I was joined by a guy off of my same carrier from a different squadron. I didn't know him before we were shot down. His name was Charlie. So Charlie and I were young naval aviators and not too greatly disciplined. They had a very strict camp code, so to speak. One of the code items was when a guard came to your door, opened the door, you were supposed to bow. Well, we didn't think we wanted to do that. So we got in a lot of trouble, got a lot of banging around, got our heads banged a few times. And finally we developed a compromise between Charlie and I. When the guards came and left, we'd nod, we wouldn't bow, and we would give them this symbol. So they asked what that symbol was, and we said, well, it's just an American greeting. Well, some years later when Jane Fonda showed up, she found out it was not an American greeting. Well, it was, but not the kind they expected. So we paid the price. Sooner or later, I went to a place called Briar Patch. How am I doing on time here? Charlie and I, as I said, made a lot of noise, et cetera, and finally one night we were pulled out of our cells, and when the cell doors open, nothing good can happen. At best, at worst, you're probably going to get a beating, maybe worse. Anyway, the door slams open at midnight. They do this signal, put on your long sleeve shirt, which is our prison outfit. They take us down to the camp commander's office. And the camp commander reads the riot act to us and tells us we're bad guys, we're going to the bad guy camp. So we said, yeah. Well, he was right. They sent us to a camp that we called Briar Patch. No water, no electricity. The guards beat on you every time the door opened, whether you needed it or not, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, after I'd been at Briar Patch for a couple of months, I figured the chances of surviving Briar Patch were about 50-50. You're either going to die of disease or you're going to be tortured to death, or they're just going to outright kill you. While I was at Briar Patch, about 6 months had passed, so I was shot down in March. This is in the fall. We're in this little cell, Charlie and I. The thing is just wide enough for 2.5 steps. Turn, walk the other way 2.5 steps. I did that by the hour, day in and day out. One window, which was normally closed, and that's it. We had a wooden plank, something like this, but it was wood. That was the bed. The food was horrible. The guards were very quick to slap you around. As I said, I figured it was 50-50 at Briar Patch. One morning, this was in October, I believe it was, I went outside the prison door. We had a little vat of water out there, stood about this high, and had a little water. And you would take your metal plate and dunk it down in this water, and that was to wash it off, and that was it. It was a crisp, cool morning, and I looked in this vat, and the water was dead calm, and I see this face staring back at me, and it just scared the hell out of me. I'd lost about 60 pounds of weight in 6 months. I weighed 175 pounds. When I was shot down, I probably weighed 115 pounds at that point in time. It just startled me. I looked like I'd just come out of a Nazi concentration camp. One more thing, one more story about Briar Patch. One day, I was called in to the camp commander's office, and the camp commander we gave him a name. We gave all the officers, all the guards names. The camp commander's name was Frenchie. Obviously, he spoke excellent French, as did most of the educated people in Vietnam. Anyway, Frenchie wanted me to write a letter to the troops in the South part of Vietnam, and to condemn the war, et cetera, et cetera. Well, this went on for about 4 hours. He was trying to convince me that I should write this letter, and I kept saying, no, I'm not going to do it. I can't do it. I won't do it, yada, yada, yada. And finally, Frenchie got up off of his desk, and he had told me during the conversation that he had been the camp commander of the Japanese that they had captured during the Second World War. He had been the camp commander of the French, who they had defeated in the Indochina War, and now he was the camp commander over the Americans. And he said, we could get the Japanese to do anything we wanted to. We could get the French to do anything he wanted to. And with that, Frenchie had walked over to beside me. I'm sitting there on the stool with my arms handcuffed behind my back, a little stool about that high so I would sit even with him or lower. And he slapped me so hard against the side of my head, he knocked me completely off of that block, screaming, pounding his feet on his desk. The Japanese would do anything. The French would do anything. You Americans are so stupid, you won't do anything. And I've been called stupid before, but this was a compliment as far as I was concerned. Well, needless to say, torture followed thereafter, and I was out of action for a couple of weeks. My arms were severely damaged. I want you to picture this for just a minute. We're talking about survival. Picture yourself in a cell in a foreign country. You have nothing. You have no car, wife, kids, whatever it is you had, you no longer have it. You're wearing a pair of ratty prison outfit. You're starving. You may be injured. There's nothing to read, right? Nothing. Nothing. No TV, no radio. You have absolutely nothing. The only thing you have is this, your wits, to keep you alive. And you have to make the decision every day that you're going to live that day, that you are going to survive, that you are going to fight and you are going to stay there alive and you are going to beat this. And you're going to eat anything that you can get a hold of. I've eaten some very disgusting things in my life, people. I've eaten dogs, rats, bugs, you name it, monkeys. I've eaten stuff so bad you had to hold your nose with one hand and eat with the other one. A bowl full of bugs in your soup, just more protein. Get it down, eat it, stay alive. That's how you survive. That's you. You set goals. If you're injured, get over it. You're not going to get any help from them. If you're sick, get over it. You're not going to get any help from them. Communicate. Talked about communicating. Keeping in touch with everybody and anywhere in the cells. Usually if you're by yourself, you've got two concrete walls, you continue. I could tap through a concrete wall a message faster than you could type on a typewriter. Now I see there's a few guys in here that are old enough to know what a typewriter is. Most of you youngsters don't, but we could communicate well. And we could do it throughout the camp. Two things. Keep other people's spirits up, just keep in touch with them. Let them know you're there, et cetera, et cetera. And we wanted to know what the Vietnamese knew about what we were doing and what they were doing. Get tougher than nails. You get tough. I'm talking mentally tough, not necessarily physically tough, mentally tough. You're going to live. And hatred, as bad as it is a big motivator. There were times throughout the years when I thought, if I could take two of these guys with me, I'd be willing to sacrifice my life. The opportunity never came, and thank God it didn't. But you get tough. Can you imagine how tough it is to sit across from an interrogator? You got nothing. You're there. They can do anything in the world they want to. They kill you right there on the spot. Nobody will ever know. To sit there and tell an interrogator, no, I am not going to do that. It takes a lot of strength, a lot of you know what. I talked about compassion. Well, I'm not talking about the kind of compassion that says, you know, I really feel sorry for you, and I hope you'll get better. Not the hand-wringing, the doing. Compassion. We talked about keeping yourself alive. Now we're talking about keeping other people alive. Some people that don't really care whether they stay alive, maybe. We had one guy was in a cell block one time, and I'm talking, you know, sometime during this period of 7 years, 4 of us were in one cell block. One of the guys, I don't know how he got there, he certainly wasn't supposed to be there, had asthma, and he had asthma attacks. The other 3 of us would have to deal with that. He'd have an asthma attack, we'd have to give him CPR, keep him breathing, keep him alive, and this went on for hours sometimes. He was just one case. Where other guys that had severe back damage or nerve damage, sciatic nerves, all we could do was to sit up at night, possibly massage their back or their legs or whatever it was to give them some kind of relief. Now, I'm glad most of you have finished dinner. This took place some years into it, maybe the fifth year or so. We had two guys. By this time, our cell block had gone from myself being in solitary confinement to 2 to 4 to 3 to 6 to 12 to up to 40 people in one cell block. We had two guys anyway. They'd been there a long time, and they just gave up. Said, "Oh, we're not going to eat anymore, we're done." Well, one guy was about 6'3" and probably weighed about 110 pounds, so you can imagine how skinny he was. Well, 6 of us got together and decided, you're not going to die on our watch. So they would refuse to eat. The food would come, garbage as it was, and they refused to eat. We put them on the floor, 6 guys, forced their mouth open and put the food in. They'd vomit it back up. We'd gather it back up off the floor and put it right back in there again. They'd throw it up, back again. It didn't take too many exercises like this till they started eating. Those guys are still walking around today. Communications, as I mentioned, keep everybody's spirits up. Lift their spirits, know what's going on. Resist the enemy. We had what we called plum. It's just an extension of the code of conduct. Resisting the enemy. We would never give them anything for free. Anything. If they wanted something from us, information or whatever it might be, they were going to have to torture us to get it. So you guys, you make up the decision. If it's that important to you that you're going to torture me to get it, that's the way it is, because we're not going to give you anything. So military discipline and unity. We had a senior ranking officer in every cell block, and there were many sometimes. And what that means is, if it's a 2-man room, one guy's in charge. And you're going to follow the discipline, the code of conduct, the plums that we had developed. If it's 50 guys, then that's what it is. An overall camp guy, commander, et cetera, et cetera. Chain of command. Unity, I'm going to tell you this. How much time have I got? About 10 minutes? 5 minutes? Okay. I'll skip that one. Toward the end of the war, it's in the last year maybe, we had started receiving some Red Cross packages, et cetera. So and people were allowed to write a little short line letter. One of the guys in there, a guy by the name of Mike Christian, good friend of mine, he's unfortunately passed away. Mike had gathered up enough red, white, and blue material to sew up a flag with a little imagination. If you had a little imagination, it was a flag. Anyway, so we made needles out of chicken bones, etc., so we could sew things, and on and on. Very talented. So Mike makes a flag on the inside of his shirt, one of his prison shirts. And in that cell block, I was not in it, but I know the people, I know Mike, and everybody had the same story. So Mike makes up this shirt, and every morning they would take the shirt and hang it on something in their cell block, and they would all give a pledge of allegiance to the flag. Well, as prisons happened, they had a shakedown one day, and the Vietnamese found the flag. Well, they figured out who it belonged to, Mike. They took him out, beat the crap out of him, excuse my French. He showed up a couple hours later all bruised up and his eyes all swollen. And a few days later, after Mike recovered, he went around and collected some more cloth and made another flag. which he fortunately was able to bring home with him. So, to me, that is true pride in your country. Conditions improved. We had the B-52 raids in December of '72, which was actually what saved us and brought us home. A quick release. Eventually, one night, I was in the cell 50 guys. All of a sudden, at midnight, the doors slammed open. The Vietnamese walked in with boxes of clothes, shoes, etc. We knew something was happening. This was different. We got rid of our old prison clothes, put on our new pants, shirts, little black duffel bag. That morning, they marched us out 2 at a time. It's the first time I'd ever been out of the prison without handcuffs and a blindfold. Put us on a bus. They took us out to the main joint airfield, which was called Gilam. And, of course, we all thought it was a dream. After you faced this for years and years and years and years, you never got your hopes too high or your downs too down. We're sitting on the one side of the airfield in the bus. They gave us Vietnamese cigarettes and warm Vietnamese beer, and we're sitting there for a long period of time. All of a sudden, you see out through the front of the bus, an Air Force 141 come in, big gray airplane with a flag on the tail, painted on the tail. And there was hardly a dry eye. This is the first time I'd seen a flag in 7 years. They marched us through. The Vietnamese had to sign us off. The Americans had to accept us. I remember after waiting in line, finally this burly Air Force sergeant grabs me by the shoulder after I'd gone through the line, got all of the things taken care of. He grabs me by the shoulder, and we're walking out to this 141, and he says, "We better get on and get out of here before they change their mind." And I said, "You'll be running to keep up with me." Anyway, I remember the flight out of there, and euphoria is not even a good enough word to say it. I remember I was sitting backwards as we crossed over the coastline of North Vietnam, and I had a cold shiver down my back, and I said, "I will never come back here again," and I haven't. A lot of people have. They've been treated well. Not me. I know too. I figured I'd escape death probably a dozen times by a very razor-thin margin, and I wasn't going to try it again. What did I learn from there? I never carried that hatred back. During my period of time, probably about the 5th or 6th year, I said, when I go back, I want to be the same guy that came here. If I can remember who that was, I'm not going to take this hate, etc., back with me. So when I left, I closed the chapter. I closed that chapter of the book. I'm going to go forward and live life. I wanted to get back and fly off aircraft carriers, which I did. I met my wife, 48-year anniversary this year, in Denmark. Continued on with my life and my career. Never looked back at Vietnam other than to feel sorrow for those who we lost over there. I don't sweat the small things, guys. We have a saying, as long as the doorknob's on the inside of the door, it's going to be a great day. And with that, I'll conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Commander Smith. Token of our appreciation, we've got a service tumbler here for you.
At this time, we're going to watch a brief video presentation. If you please direct your attention to the screen. Members, thank you for attending today's meeting. The meeting is now adjourned.